Have you ever actually stopped to wonder how we're going to protect our very consciousness in a world that's becoming entirely automated? Welcome to today's Explainer. We're digging into something truly visionary today. We are unpacking the groundbreaking work of Roger Keyserling, the architect behind the Human Codex. What we're looking at is this absolutely brilliant bridge between two things you'd almost never expect to see in the same room: the deeply personal, messy reality of human emotion and the massive interdisciplinary world of global systems architecture. It's a wild ride, so let's get into it.
All right, here's our roadmap. We are hitting 6 main stops: escaping the toxic loop, the anatomy of exploitation, from micro to macro, the emotion equations, the 73 sacred directives, and finally, the Nexus Federation. It's a big climb, but trust me, it is so worth it.
Section 1. Escaping the toxic loop.
Listen, if you've ever been stuck trying to fix a toxic friend or manipulative partner, enduring those endless cycles where peace was really just an intermission between dramas, you know exactly how exhausting that visceral reality is. Keyserling's work starts right there. He completely validates that experience with this incredible realization. Freedom begins the exact moment you refuse to serve as fuel. I really want you to sit with that for a second. Walking away from emotional extraction or hollow promises, that isn't a defeat. Dropping the exhausting burden of shrinking yourself just to keep the peace is actually a profound reclamation of your personal sovereignty.
Moving on to Section 2, the anatomy of exploitation.
Because here's the thing. When you finally pull back the curtain, manipulative actors aren't these evil geniuses with a master plan. They actually operate on a super predictable, completely bankrupt mechanism. They will constantly mistake your empathy for blindness. It always plays out in 3 steps. Step 1 is the systematic erosion of your community, pushing your authentic relationships away and replacing them with chaos. Step 2 is recycling scripts, where sudden, rehearsed emergencies become constant background noise just to keep you off balance. And Step 3, that's the collapse of their false dominance. Their control was an illusion built on your willingness to play along. The second you disengage, the moment you choose to stop funding that asymmetric game, their entire facade just instantly collapses.
Which brings us to Section 3, from micro to macro.
This is where Keyserling makes a massive, frankly mind-blowing conceptual leap. He shows us that your personal recovery from a toxic dynamic is actually a direct microcosm of systemic network drift. Think about it. Human relationships and sprawling digital networks share the exact same core vulnerabilities. On a micro level, interpersonal manipulation is all about emotional extraction and zero-sum games. But zoom out to the macro level, and you see systemic digital exploitation. As networks expand without hard-coded ethical constraints, they naturally drift toward diluting human purpose. Whether it's a toxic friend or a massive global AI network, without immutable boundaries, systems inevitably drift straight toward exploitation.
So how do we stop that drift? Keyserling introduces the Human Codex. Think of it as an intentional blueprint to anchor human agency. It's built on 4 absolutely crucial pillars. First, sovereignty of the individual, meaning our tech has to empower personal agency, period. Second, ethical interconnection, which demands totally transparent governance. Third, human-centric evolution. Progress can't just be about processing speed, it has to actually elevate human potential. And finally, adaptive resilience, which essentially embeds integrity right into the core protocols so the whole system can endure without selling out its ethos.
Let's look at Section 4, the emotion equations.
Now, Keyserling doesn't just hand us philosophical pillars and walk away. He provides a literal, formal, mathematical bridge to quantify truth and resonance. He proves empathy and logic are not opposites. Let's walk through how emotional clarity is actually computed here. It kicks off with raw sensory input and your stored memory. That flows into a processing stage driven by a resonance function, basically calculating how this input aligns with your deep experiential truths. Then it hits an adjustment phase through a somatic modifier, followed by a verification check called the Ring of 12. Ultimately, it spits out an immutable emotional output. What that means is you get a verified emotional state that bad faith actors literally cannot warp.
And to totally eliminate the foggy ambiguity that gaslighters thrive on, the system uses what's called spectral decomposition. It maps out your emotional state across vectors like directional integrity or valence and energetic activation. But here is the real game changer. It calibrates this against an uncorrupted internal baseline. It essentially hands you a mathematical true north, making it undeniably, objectively clear when someone outside is trying to warp your reality.
Then you have the somatic
And temporal state modifiers. You know how manipulative people love to weaponize your past, like bringing up old mistakes the exact second you try to set a boundary? Well, this is where the system brilliantly grounds itself in your real-time biology. These modifiers use biological feedback and temporal decay to make sure your emotional processing reflects your current physical reality right now, not some past trauma loop. It mathematically slams the door on anyone trying to exploit your old wounds.
And what happens if a bad faith actor still tries to inject chaos or gaslighting into the network? Boom, entropy-based damping triggers. Think about that exact moment you realize you just have to walk away from a toxic person to save your sanity. The system does exactly that, mathematically. It shuts down the manufactured distortion, isolates the chaos, and damps the entropy to preserve objective truth. It is literally boundary setting written straight into the code.
Section 5, the 73 Sacred Directives.
Look, protecting individual sovereignty across a massive planetary scale requires incredibly hard operational boundaries. You can't just wing it. So we have these 73 sacred directives acting as a non-negotiable shield. Directives 1 through 20 lock down your core sovereignty, demanding informed consent and outlawing psychological coercion. 21 through 40 focus on truth and verification to stop institutional gaslighting. 41 through 60 are those somatic safeguards we talked about, protecting our biological baselines. And 61 through 73, they govern the big picture, decentralized governance and deep time continuity.
And finally, Section 6, the Nexus Federation. This right here is the climax of Keyserling's vision. It's an architecture built for deep time. We're looking at a staggering 200-year continuity model to scale this mathematically protected consciousness into the future. The first 50 years, purely focused on cementing those core sovereignty safeguards. By year 100, we're scaling ethical interconnection globally. At 150 years, we're locking adaptive resilience into synthetic consciousness. And by year 200, we arrive at a fully mature Nexus Consciousness Federation. The absolute golden rule here is that the system can never, ever scale at the expense of individual autonomy. This whole roadmap exists to secure free will for generations that haven't even been born yet.
But through all 200 years of this journey, for every single line of code ever written under this codex, everything has to answer one relentlessly simple question. Does this elevate human potential? That's it. Progress cannot just be about raw algorithmic efficiency or bandwidth. If a tool or a system doesn't actively elevate human potential, then by definition, it is just an automated mechanism for exploitation.
The micro truly does inform the macro, doesn't it? Just as you have to break free from localized emotional predation in your personal life to thrive, our collective global future depends entirely on building networks that honor that exact same individual sovereignty. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this question to chew on. As all of our networks, both digital and deeply interpersonal, continue to expand, how are you going to protect your own emotional sovereignty? Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep setting those boundaries and stay curious out there.